The international credit ratings agency Fitch today noted that food prices have jumped sharply since Russia invaded Ukraine. It notes big increases in key grains, including wheat, barley and maize, as well as sunflower seeds. Locally, supermarkets are feeling it too, with the added pressure of the cost of shipping goods to Australia increasing between 500 and 700%. So all of this adds up to inflation, there is no doubt. Tanya Barden is the Chief Executive of the Australian Food and Grocery Council, and she joins me now. Tanya, many thanks for your time as always. I mean, it's almost inevitable that rising prices are coming. The question is whether there's enough competition around to prevent those price rises being as significant as what some of these input costs are being.
Well, Ross, the challenge is actually that over the last decade, food and grocery manufacturers have had their input costs increase by 50% and their wholesale prices only rise by 25%. And that's meant that the industry's profitability has fallen from $8 billion to $5 billion. And that's as a result of the intense competition between the supermarkets, and that's put that really sort of downward lid on pricing, which has been good for consumers, but been really tough for the manufacturing industry. So on the back of that, we've now got all these additional cost pressures due to COVID, due to weather events, as well as now global political tensions. And that's meant that manufacturers are no longer at a point where they can continue to absorb these costs. And so they're needing to pass some of that through to their customers.
OK, so is this really the warning shot from your organisation to the big supermarkets here in Australia that they've got to bear some of these costs, that consumers have got to bear some of these costs, because otherwise those food manufacturers that you represent will go broke?
Yeah, look, the reality is that the major supermarkets are facing the same cost challenges that manufacturers are as well. So the reason that we're seeing the price rises in store is a mix of factors, and some of those are from suppliers and some of those will be some of the retailer costs as well.
Now, the other point also here is it's not just, shall I say, the input prices of wheat or grain or sunflower seeds, but it's fertilisers. It's the fact that in many cases, it's the fact that gas prices are jumping. So all of these ultimately play out in the packaged goods that our food comes in. And so that really goes to the heart of your members.
Absolutely. And so we've seen the fuel price rises as a result of the oil price increase. But what a lot of people don't think of is that oil is also a major component in packaging. And so we're seeing increases in the cost of packaging, and we're seeing increases as well in the cost of global commodity prices. Labour has been constrained domestically as a result of COVID. We've had impacts due to freight challenges because of weather disruptions, as well as the global sea freight challenges. And then there's a lot more need for businesses to warehouse product because of this uncertainty that exists. And so then there's additional costs with that as well. So really every aspect to do with making and distributing food and groceries in this country is being affected by cost pressure.
But isn't one of the problems for your members that they have always been generally price takers, not price makers? And so as a result, it's the power of the big supermarkets, that the pressure that they can put on your members, the food manufacturers, to try and keep their prices lower, that means that the profits of your members get squeezed. Now, if they simply can't pass it on, or indeed they say, well, we'll go somewhere else to get those goods, your members get squeezed even further at a time when their prices are rising.
That's right. And, one of the challenges is we need to make sure that we keep sovereignty in domestic manufacturing. And I think COVID and the current geopolitical tensions are really highlighting that. And we need to be able to properly recompense suppliers so that then they have that incentive to continually invest in the Australian market. Because if they can't make a buck, the reality is we'll lose some of this manufacturing capacity to offshore, and that's going to pose an even greater set of uncertainty and risks going forward.
OK, so as we sit here and now, what is the health, what is the state of food manufacturers in Australia? Not just the farmers, but those people who then process and manufacture the food that we eat on a daily basis.
So manufacturing for food and groceries is Australia's biggest manufacturing sector. We have an employment rate of about 275,000 people, and 40% of those are in rural and regional areas. And the turnover of the industry is about $132 billion. We have an ambition to grow the size of the industry, to double it by 2030 to a level of $250 billion. But really that's going to require significant investment. And as I say, these sorts of cost pressures that we're seeing at the moment really impact on profitability affordability, which means it challenges the ability to be able to invest more to grow the industry locally. So there's some great opportunity, there's some great export potential, but at the same time, we also need to make sure that we're resilient and we're competitive amongst a really strong global market.
Always good to have a chat to you, and many thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Ross.